my directive from the CIP committee was to look at the proposed project, and then look at staffing and operational costs, and see what potential savings might be there. I want to be very clear that this is just an estimate, an exercise that I've been asked to do, whether it's this superintendent or another board, as Jesse mentioned. This really doesn't have a whole lot of anything until things get passed. But it does give us a little perspective on potentially what things might or could look like. So from an operational cost, and for me that was closing the elementary school. So just taking the elementary school and closing that because we passed this bond and we're moving in. So when I look at things like oil, electricity, and water and sewer, and repairs and maintenance, contracted service and all those things, I had originally estimated about $76,000 worth of operational costs that would have been saved. Over the last couple of days, our architects and folks and engineers have been working diligently to give us, so if we're going to save $76,000 potentially to open up this facility at 51,000 square feet, what was it cost to make that run? And so we had those numbers back. We got them back actually, it was yesterday afternoon. And so the good news was that it would be $27,000 less per year in fuel oil. That was the good news. The not so great news was, and again, these are high estimates, again, because they're working on not a detailed bid right now, but a pre-bond sort of proposal. The not so good news was they're projecting potentially a $33,000 increase in electricity. So a net capacity of the new building of potentially $6,000 more when it comes to electricity and fuel. Now, if I take that 6 and I go through my process again, what I was able to do by identifying again areas of repairs and maintenance, water and sewer, looking at the gymnasium, the usage of the gym, at the Sherburne gym, we wouldn't be using that as much, and other factors. My estimate right now is we could save about $47,000 in operational costs if we close that elementary school and cut back on our usage, obviously, of the Sherburne gym. So $47,000 there. I then went and again did my exercise at looking at personnel. And this is just, again, me looking at what I think potentially could be done if we passed the bond and we moved into this new facility. And I started right at the SAU level. I talked about there were currently 4.5 full-time people working there. And one of the things I would recommend is that once you got this building up and running and operational, that you could potentially cut back on some SAU services, specifically with the superintendent position. Again, that would be your decision to make, but you could potentially cut back to an 80% position or a 70% position, again, once that school got up and running. Administration, I looked at, we have currently 2.5. I left that 2.5 number. My take on it was, though, looking at more of a pre-K through 12 principal, some assistant principal, full-time assistant principal at the pre-K through 7 level, and then maybe a part-time assistant principal 8 through 12. There was about a $20,000 savings there.
But just to clarify, so
yes.
we have 2.5 now,
yes.
And then your new proposal is counting on 2.5, whether those positions are different or not. But it's 2.5, 2.5. Okay.
And potential little savings. So I won't go that too much more detail. So I looked at administrative assistants, and I cut our administrative assistants from currently 4.5 back to 3. I looked at our nurse. We had 2. I know that's people have talked a lot about that, and whether we could go from 2 nurses that we currently have now to 1 nurse, and maybe an LNA as an assistant. Potential savings there. Potential savings on some custodial. Even though we have a bigger building, being in one place, being able to be a lot more efficient. I think we might have some savings there. Contracted services, because of the 2 buildings, OT, PT, and speech, we have to hire some additional people because of the crossover. We could cut back there. And then the last piece, potentially in food service, again, since we're serving still the same amount of kids, but we may be able to be more efficient because we'll all be in one cafeteria. We don't have to send 2 people down and away. So there might be an opportunity to save some money there. So salary and benefit, my calculations, I had about $300,000 potentially in savings in salaries and benefits. You add that to the 47, so about $347,000 in salary and benefits, which, based upon our operating budget and the bond payment, could be, if that was to take place right now when we put those in effect, could have been about a 28 cents impact of the tax, a negative to the tax.
Significant.
So,
Questions or comments from the board?
No, I think that was well presented.
Yeah.
Does that decision, the cuts for teachers, which is a very hard thing to do when you're dealing with faces that you know, does that lie solely upon you with our recommendation, or how does that work?
So just to be very clear, there were no teacher cuts, because all our programs that we have, we will still need, and I need my teachers to be able to instruct my
Should
kids.
have
But
said employees.
personnel, thank you, employees. So what would happen, at which point in time this came to fruition, there would be a recommendation made by the superintendent with all personnel, and that would be given, specifically teachers, and be given to you. The administration would be the same. For support staff, custodians, bus drivers, administrative assistants, that is directly responsible of the superintendent.
So if it passes, that's 2 years out, everybody is still, positions needed, there's gonna be a whole nother conversation about how things are staged to limit disruption, that can often make more work and more resource needs during that transition, during the building. So all of that would come, but I think you met the expectation that we had to get a realistic look at $347,000 operating costs. So I know the potential, looking 2 years into the future, new board, potential new board, all those other caveats. So for those of you that have been impatiently waiting for the operating cost, you can leave with that projected number of $347,000 total, with some granular insight into how that number is generated. Anything else from the board? Question? I see your question eyebrows before.
No, I mean, so I think the preface that this is all based on estimate, right? It's nothing, right? I mean,
So this is
a
my,
whole lot more investigation needed.
this is my work through conversation.
Yeah.
No one else has, Kelly really hasn't even done this work, this is
Right.
me, and I've done that very intentionally.
Yeah. And I mean, I would think in reality, if this is the direction that we go, we get approval, we probably want to be a little bit diligent about trying to pursue input from potentially other similar campus structures for people to get their feedback and their input about what it takes to do this, to make sure that our
Yeah.
assumptions are validated in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
No set. Please.
I mean, if the board is approving the warrant article language,
Yes.
I'm going to suggest a change to the last phrase, the last part of this.
Please.
This authorizes the school board to accept funds for the project and use it to reduce the amount of bonds. During the discussion about fundraising down the road, and also during mention about state building aid, especially with the timing of state building aid, if you receive that aid, you wouldn't get funds until July 2021, which could be after you've funded the entire amount you need for the project. So my suggestion is just to add more flexibility into this by just rewording this, starting from the last sentence over, and authorize the school board to accept on behalf of the district any federal, state, or private funds that may become available with respect to the project, period. And those funds, so if you got building aid, you could put it in your school facilities capital reserve and use it to pay debt service.
Super.
More flexible.
Thank you. That's great. Okay. Anything else on school? All right. Let's make sure that we are, any discussion, the Technology Capital Reserve Fund. Again, I think both Andy and I, Kevin would remember, we both asked Mike, with everything that happened and how much it cost, is $50,000 enough? So we're not making light of $50,000, but it was catastrophic what happened with the, I'm gonna lose the word, server getting hijacked, basically. No ransom was paid, but there's been a discussion in a couple of years I've been on the board that we don't have enough of a backup, so it was a relief to see that discussion be productive, and the ABC went into it at great length. So anything around this one? And we were all at the same meeting, I'm just trying to inform the public. Meetings where we talked
And
about
I think it sounded to me like, and same with the meetings last year, he's really maxed out doing what he can with what he's had. He's held back, longer than maybe he should have to ask for something like this. And he's been very prudent, and so
Yeah.
it's almost something that's overdue from my sense of it.
I think just trying to maximize lifespan on software usage, hardware usage, all that stuff, maybe a little bit longer than we should, but even still, in that scenario, you potentially could have something fail
Yeah.
and have no backup to support it.
Yeah, I get the clear message that the next board next year with Russ and Mike are likely gonna be hearing about a staffing adjustment with the breadth of responsibility. So if you guys feel that that's covered, again, we've already in public meetings talked about this a lot. The reserve fund,
Hey,
please, keep going.
So I suggest, it says for the purpose of maintaining computer equipment, et cetera. I'm suggesting that we change maintaining to acquiring. I think maintaining risks, DRA, avoidance, as a not, proper purpose for capital reserves.
Great.
And then dollars after 50,000.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that. Super.
So, in this scenario, if it was something like we just experienced, is there anything that we actually acquired to deal with
Well, I'm not
that?
sure, I'm not exactly sure what you actually,
Well, we acquired the service to do the forensic analysis, right?
Is that covered here?
But that was through our insurance, I'm
Insurance.
speaking for you, sorry. The insurance company dealt with forensics, but if we're gonna beef up the system we're gonna be acquiring, that gives us the flexibility to get some more modernized, to buy some more modernized. We're not doing the maintaining. I think it's great. Keep going as we go through this. That's a great clarification. The board set, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I think we'll go back to it, I'll finish with that, just to make sure, I thought we'd already talked about it. Okay, so number 6, shall the district raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 in the school facilities capital reserve fund? Again, that $163,371 does not reflect the consultant's work. We don't have the final number, but it's gonna bring it, my impression is about $100,000 to get to this point, but it's not a known fact yet. So that fund is gonna greatly diminish. Is everyone clear on the 25, so that if we do have a crisis in the short term? It's great if the bill, even if it passes in 2 years, we might need to fix something in a hurry. We had to patch the roof.
So Kelly just reminded me regarding the capital reserve, the air handler is also coming out of that. So this account will be nearly completed at the end of this year.
Yeah, so we're going on the skinny, to just have 25. Yeah, okay.
Is that gonna be enough for us if the school doesn't pass? If it's depleted?
We still have a little bit of money left in the elementary account. We haven't been putting money in that account because this one can actually handle both buildings and all facilities. There's a little bit of money left in that account if we need to tap into it. It's under, probably under $100,000. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not being able to foresee, but we hope we will be able to get by at least the year without having to tap into the budget. The other piece we do have is, we have a contingency account, the 2.5 contingency account, that we have the right to come to the board and ask them to be able to, in an emergency situation. There's about $265,000 in that, which is 2.5% of our overall budget.
We good with that one?
Yes.
Number 7, district raise and appropriate $50,000 for the roof fund. Scanning, patch it, new warranty for that section, the discussion we had earlier, we've talked about multiple times, does that make sense? Okay, and then, please.
just on that, I'm not sure if it was inadvertent. Is this a roof fund, or is it a capital reserve, or is it a expendable trust, or?
I thought it was a roof fund, hang on a second.
Is that what it's called?
Is that the title of it?
Sunnyvale High School, we call it the Sunnyvale High School roof fund, so it's,
But it's a capital reserve,
Yeah.
but it's called.
Be okay with that?
Should we just call it the Sunbeam Middle High School Capital
Well, I
Reserve
mean-
Roof Fund?
But if it's called the Sunapee Middle High School Roof Fund, then it's called, we know what it is. I just wasn't sure if it was inadvertent, that capital reserve.
No, it's just, it was named.
Okay. We've talked about this multiple times. Anything else you wanna add? Okay. Not seeing any more from the attorney. I'd say, attorney, between meetings, pointed out that, warrant number 8, the authorize the treasurer, that's no longer required as a warrant article, so that'll come off. It's excessive or no longer needed, correct?
Yeah, the treasurer has authority to appoint deputy,
Yep.
subject to school board approval.
Okay, we're down to the last one. Number 9, should Sunapee School Board create a committee including representatives of all stakeholders to investigate K through 5 and give school choice for 9 through 12? So there was, quickly, the temperature went up in the room, and this was talked about before, but this is our first chance to talk about the board. So, I know everyone's been enduring and hanging in there, but I think we are due to honor this by each of us having our own opinion. It's fine if we agree, and it's just as fine if we don't. Reminder that this is by petition. We are the body responsible for these decisions. This is democracy in action, and people, it'll be on the ballot. There's no opportunity for someone to have a counter or a change. We'll discuss this probably at length at the deliberative session on the 3rd, and the author of it will speak, and others that support it can speak. I'd like to, I guess the harsh reality that I feel responsible to voice is that if the community will not support this bond and does not support safe schooling space for our students, there's a really short list of things that the next board is going to have to consider, and probably in their first meeting in March. And those, being deep into this the last couple of years with 2 different consultants, would be high on a short list. Do we make use of the building we have and do so? There's other different conversations that can happen about potential operating costs and how that affects. So do we do the Grantham model, K6, pre-K 6 or 8? Do we have an $18 million quote for the elementary school that served us well. I haven't seen, personally, having talked to a lot of people, I haven't heard a peep about wanting to pour more money into that, because some, even if we do it in stages, because we're gonna have kids in it, we can't do it all at once, it'd be a multi-year staging. Trying to determine the bare minimum so that we can, it's really about safety, it's not fixing any of the education. You can get the modulars out and put in new modulars, you know, those things can happen, but we're talking about stairwell on the outside for fire, all these other things. I've seen no appetite in the community.
No educational benefit.
No educational benefit and a massive disruption. It's hard enough to get the kids there safely and out in the morning and in the afternoon, let alone having it be a construction site. So from a variety of opinions and feelings and passions, I haven't personally heard anyone with an appetite for that, but the board has to bring that as a consideration. So K8 using this building, patching that building, which really kicks it down the road farther, or start all over. That's kind of what the board March 11th, if this fails, is going to have to consider. So it's discomforting, but if the community isn't going to support the building, these are the conversations that are going to happen in a couple months with the new board. They have to. We don't have a plan B, and the next board better get one, because if the community votes loudly and soundly votes down the proposal that we brought forward, we have some really, really difficult conversations to have, because it's much broader, whether you support the school or not, there are much broader economic, workforce development, other impacts that will affect all of us, that will bring us together as recipients of the majority vote. But there are much broader things to consider. When you look at communities that have had schools and then had the schools closed, looking at where the tax burden shifts, the ability to sell homes, attract new families. The schools draw the regeneration of communities. We happen to have the second best public one as rated in New Hampshire, and we've seen a nice little bump in students this year. Parent voice, all of those other factors. When you talk to 100 coworkers that I have in Grantham, and was considering moving back from Minnesota, the biggest thing was I could buy a lot more house and a lot easier to buy a house in Grantham. But the thing was, one, I did personally as a parent didn't want to have our son sitting on a bus every day. But the thing that really, really aggravated me was their frustration with when you're sending to another district, you don't have a parent's voice, you're a customer, and you might, depending like they do with some regional schools, you can have representation on the school board. But there's just some large financial, let alone cultural and identity changes. So I'm hopeful that we've been able to bring forward something that whether people are thrilled about it or not, they can see the prudence and care, and that we're able to invest in our future, not just for the students, but all of us as taxpayers and homeowners. I'm really hopeful for that. So that's me speaking as an individual, whether I cross the line or not. It's recorded in public, I own it, and I would say the same thing another time. So other voices.
Well, it's interesting that, Article 9's on here because you and I have been at many CIP meetings together where we have had that question brought to us. And I know we've talked multiple times about it, and we've also asked for us to start to research it well before this article ever went in, just so that we would have an idea of what the cost would be. And I think that he's gonna be close to being able to tell us some numbers soon. Tonight, I don't know, but.
By deliberative, can you, or are you?
We can, so there's some rough numbers as far as what tuition may cost us to go to a choice. I have not done yet the comparison looking at the proposal to a potential tuition. And I think we went over this in December. Just real quick, if you take the state average cost per pupil, that's 1718, that's on the Department of Education's website, it's $16,214. You multiply that times 155 students. I added 10 more students in there because special ed students are twice the cost per pupil to educate. And so if you take the 165 times the 16,214, you get a number of $2,675,310. I added an additional $500,000 in there for out-of-district tuition. As I mentioned earlier tonight, we do have a capital reserve account, but 2 students, if they were to go to Crotchet Mountain or Spalding, could be $200,000 and anywhere between $50,000 and $70,000 just to transport them there. Because we do go to a choice solution, those special ed kids may not end up going to another public school. And then lastly, the transportation to go to, let's say if we had an anchor school of Kearsarge or Newport, was about $75,000, and that would take at least one bus coming from a central location and driving kids over, perhaps a late bus then for kids that maybe didn't participate in sports to come home. So overall, it looks like the tuition bill would be about $3,250,310. And if you added that on to our, if I did take that calculation of taking that $47,000 out of closing that building, it's going to put our budget over the proposed budget that we have this year.
And also, that doesn't take into consideration that we have to retrofit the school for elementary kids.
Yeah, so
and still fix
right.
our HVAC, boilers, so we're looking at a bond number regardless of probably $4 million plus.
That's what the number was last year, and we don't have it in the scope of work
Right.
for Gordon, but when pushing him a little bit to be concurred that it would be in that range.
So there's just no easy button to this, I guess what we're getting at. And if we ever did, if God forbid if this ever happen, it's gonna play a big toll on this town as to who it is. The identity of the town will be totally different.
So if you had a $9 million budget with a $9.7 million budget with a $3.2 million tuition, out-of-district tuition, high school cost, and then a potential bond of maybe $3 million, you're looking at a $16 million budget compared to the $12 million budget potentially, or that we'll be looking at. And we can go more and tell you what that looks like against the bond and the whole thing for the deliberative session, if you like.
The way this is worded, it says you're giving the students the high school that best meets each student's needs. And as parents, I believe I moved to Sunapee to give my kid the best school that needs, so I don't really understand that portion of this part of the article. We've already made that decision. We want to be here, we want to pay taxes, so that's opposite of, I think, that just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and all of us, as taxpayers and residents, get to have an opinion. There's been comments in the past about, which happens apparently to lots of school boards, that there's one voice, they work together, the whole thing, but we all pay taxes too, and speaking only for ourselves, get to have those opinions, and I think it's good for the community here. This is how we feel when we go back to deciding whether to accept these or not. We need to leave our personal opinions out of it and go with that, but the more vocal you are with your personal opinion on something like this, I think that people here that elected us, I think that's healthy for our community, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. It's still,
I have another piece to that as well.
yeah, it's still the right thing to do.
Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I just wanted to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, that, I mean, when you're talking about kids being able to go or do whatever they want, there's no guarantee that another school has to take our kids. So they may want to go to Hanover, but Hanover doesn't have to say yes.
Well, so there's two pieces of that. That's where I was going to go in. Thank you. So we would have to have an anchor school, and I'll just give you the comparison. The anchor school, whether that be Newport or Kearsarge, Newport's tuition rate's $15,000 and change. Kearsarge is $17,000 and change. I use the cost per pupil state average at 16. So let's say we did just give the 16, and someone did want to go to Hanover, and Hanover is 19 or 20,000. That's coming out of that parent's pocket if that child wants to go there, if they're accepted. And so, if we had our anchor school, and I'm not going to say that, as if it was Kearsarge, you're only giving 16, you're now hitting every other parent up to go to Kearsarge as our anchor school at another $1,000 or whatever it may be in change. So, yes, if you're offering that choice option, I think it's the idea, yeah, it's going to be what's best for the child, but not every child will have that same opportunity to get into additional schools that are not our anchor schools.
I just want to point out that we were the top 2 in the state this year.
We're number 2 out of the public schools.
Pretty sure that we don't have a lot of options around us that are better than us.
There are not.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's a tough thing as a board, because you look at communities very nearby where their systems are struggling, and so we don't want to, I just can't in good conscience as a public servant say anything negative about the schools, and just having some insight into how, our nearby neighbors, their school systems are just being crushed with issues and problems and everything else. But it comes down to, a rating is a rating. We have a rating and they have a rating, and the options nearby are not rated as we are. And Tanner's here, he's shaking his head because I'm being diplomatically careful, but I think it's important to just acknowledge the, we aren't nearby a bunch of other top in the state, in one of the best states for public education. So the options are different, and if you're not connected to the school system in any way, I totally respect the viewpoint, but when you look at the identity, I moved back from Minnesota, and it was not easy to buy a house here. It was really not easy. It was a long time. It's like a bad country song. I tell you what it took to be able to have our son in the school system, but it was worth it. Every day it's worth it.
Sure.
Do you, as a superintendent, get to set the rate for tuition kids coming in?
You as a school
We
board.
do.
Okay, so the school board sets the rate. Can that rate be different for what community wants to send their kids, or when the school board sets a rate, it's just one rate for whoever wants to come in?
It's one rate for whoever wants to come in. So they wouldn't say, hey, Hopkinton, you get this rate, and Sunapee, you get this rate, and Concord, you get this rate. They don't, like we do with tuition.
But, for instance, if Sunapee did close, and they know that we'll be looking out, like when we had our SAU in Newport, they could choose to set the rates whatever they want, because they know Sunapee, as people say, have deep pockets, and that's scary. That you move out and we'll get you in for 17,000 this year, but now that we got 40 kids from Sunapee and only 10 from another community, let's just set that rate at 22,000 per student this year, because they're gonna pay it. You lose that choice, you lose that voice.
And so I know you're talking about the financial end of it. I think that's important as an aspect of that. I understand you have to have that conversation. But I also want to just make it very clear, if you lose your high school, you have no control. You don't have control of the curriculum, their teachers, the content, the sporting programs, you lose it all. You don't have any say anymore over that. And I do honestly think, and it hasn't been said, but I think you lose your community. I think you lose an identity of who you are as a community. And I think that's really important.
Go ask a realtor.
Yeah, I gotta tell
The
you,
impact.
one more thing. Went to the banner raising the other night, I couldn't find a seat. I dare people to go watch a Sunapee High School basketball game because it is loud.
Any of that.
Yep.
As it relates to the warrant itself, though, I guess out of the discussion earlier, I got out of that it's gonna be on the ballot and it's not binding. What about the wording? Is there any, I mean, like for the warrants that we put on, we have professional advice to make sure there's clear, straightforward, understandable wording. Sometimes with petition articles, that's not the case, and so what ability do we have to make it more straightforward if that's, I haven't looked at it.
Deliberative is fascinating, because the writer can speak, has to speak about it, supporters can speak about it, and everybody else can, and anybody in the room can make a motion to amend it. It's fascinating. It's like democracy on steroids. So we
if
don't.
there's any ambiguity, the deliberative session
Yeah.
can help fix that.
We take it, but it's the author owns it. We receive it. We bring it to the deliberative session.
Legislative body then has control over to amend.
It goes back to the public after they're done. And so I think it's very important for somebody who, hopefully everybody's engaging, whatever your opinion is, engaging dozens of other people so that no one's caught off guard on voting day with the budget and the project and everything else. It needs to have clarity to be fair to the voter that this is how a petition warrant works. It's exciting that we have this option in our democracy, but you gotta make sure that people understand, like the woman in the back earlier, does that mean my kids go to Curacao? No, the board's the governing body, but the legislative body, which is all of you, have an opportunity to clarify and amend the language with a motion, a second, and a vote. It's absolutely fascinating if you like government. It's a
It
beautiful
would be
thing.
great to see some participation along those lines, just so that everybody's on the same page with it.
Yep, I guarantee it is gonna be a fascinating evening, that and beyond, just the general topic, more information. We had a gym full last year, apparently, it was certainly more than the first year I was on the board, and I'm having a suspicion that maybe even this discussion and this event may pack the house, and people sure are opinionated in Sunapee, so, and vocal, so we'll see what happens.
Democracy at its
I wanna
best.
make sure, cause you gave me a nudge for clarity, so we can bring this to a close. This is like the longest discussion and action item, and like, we're gonna get the school board Guinness Book of World Records, but that's a good thing, because we're engaged in having a discussion. Did we talk about the budget? I honestly can't remember.
Yes.
Okay,
That's the item.
Please.
On the bond warrant article,
yes.
I assume from the other articles that the voters require a tax impact statement. And so if you're required to have the estimated tax impact,
We're not
that includes this article. And the tax impact is the estimate is a board determination, so.
So is that, we're not required, we never vote to make us required.
I'm sorry?
Kelly was saying that we're not required, that the vote was never taken, how it's required to put that tax impact on.
Okay.
that warrant.
So, but you guys do it on your own? So it kind of makes the question about whether you need one here.
My understanding on us not having is because we haven't decided the term length, where these others don't have
Remember
terms.
That warrant article is really on the 450,000.
Okay.
So we could add that in there.
Yeah, for consistency's sake, let's do that so that nobody has to wonder. That's a great ad.
And then, well, I guess I'll leave it.
You go ahead, if you, I
Well,
heard
no,
a dot, you keep going.
So, I mean, if you have the tax impact, you say the tax impact is 36 cents. And then, you might hear some dissent that, well, the next year it's $2. And that 36-cent tax impact statement is, somebody could say, misleading. So, I mean.
Which is why I think we, on the bond, haven't put that there.
Right.
Why we try to really articulate, like we did tonight, first year, second year, and try to show people that second year, which is
Right.
the full.
And so, I mean, I don't think it would be out of line to say estimated tax impact 2021,
Right.
36 cents.
Year one,
22.
Stamp it.
Yeah.
Yep,
And give the first 2 years so that there's transparency on it.
yeah. Good continuous improvement suggestion.
Yep.
That's good. I think that's great, because somebody will know right away, because it is different, and then it's right out there. All right. We're at the finish line. Feel it. We've still got a whole second half of the meeting to run, believe it or not. So take a deep breath. You can have like a stretch moment, maybe some jumping jacks. All in favor of approving the proposed 2020-2021 warrant articles, please say aye. Unanimous, thank you. Information items.
We'll go quick, just letting you know that the NHUE Building Aid Letter of Intent was submitted before January 1st, like it was supposed to. We are officially on the list, and we will submit the full report to the state by July 1. So we are officially on the list, along with, I think it was 35 or 45 other school districts looking for money out of building aid that does not exist.
So whatever can be done is being done.
We're doing that.
We're not holding our breath, but if there's, some falls out of, thank you.
Thank you.
If some falls out of the sky, we've dotted our i's and crossed our t's to be receptive. Energy Committee.
We received a letter from the Sunday Energy Committee. The letter's in your packet. They would like some information and kind of get a look at our efficiencies in our proposed building, and would welcome an opportunity to meet with the CIP committee, or for the CIP committee to go and meet with their committee, just have some discussion on how we can potentially work together as we move forward.
Yeah, they're great. They've been at the forums, they pulled us aside, they talked to Gordon, they talked
They were here
to
earlier tonight.
Danwell, and they were here earlier. All of you have persevered longer than they did. Manifest. I would like to take the AP as one, go ahead.
For information you were gonna have delivery session.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Have it on the front page. Deliberative session. Some boards, like the super and the chair, talk the whole time, and the board sits there. This is a pretty engaging board. We tried last year, for Carrie and Andy. What we did is we just divvied up what we talked about. So I'm gonna just throw it out there that, Andy, you and I are talking about the project, so I've signed you up already, or you've signed me up already. So let's just say that's done. So we have,
Working on moving the light.
I'm not gonna acknowledge that. We have extensive work on policy. What else we got? What's the topic of interest that you've been engaged in? I think
That's the budget.
our financial partner in a financial firm and budget guru. I'm staring solely at Scott, not that the others couldn't do a good job. Is there a chance you'd like to share that with the community again this year?
Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
You did a good job. I'm not trying to butter you
Although,
up.
I mean, we all participated in the meeting, so certainly if others would like to speak to just how the process went, I think that's certainly, it's good for folks not just to say, here's the budget, but this is kind of how we got to this point, so,
So I think you just negotiated, you're gonna lead the charge, do the overview, and you're expecting all of us to make a comment.
No, if you want to.
We got your back. All right, so 2 on the project, maybe 1, flight dependent, so I did acknowledge it. Budget, leader, and the rest of us are gonna lend voices. For the 2 of you, what else do we have? Policy is the biggest thing.
I don't think we're talking about that at the deliberative session.
No.
I'm just trying to think of any other,
You're just gonna go, typically, we've just given a board member
I
a
think
warrant.
we covered it, yeah,
And just had them go through that one.
yeah. We good?
There's the, yeah.
I'm just trying to, I'm starting to float, I was
Yeah.
trying to make sure. Alright, in the interest of everybody else's,
Can I give
exhaustion.
you one piece of information, just kind of think
Yes,
it's very
please.
important? So, just back to Building 8 for a moment. If by chance Building 8 did come through on our $25.6 million project, giving us 30%, we would get $7,680,000 from the state of New Hampshire. So, that's a nice chunk of change if it ever happened. Just so people know, a $7.6 million, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, that,
Maybe.
maybe with the slightest reality.
$231 million worth of requests.
Yeah, there's quite a queue. We are far from the only community struggling with the challenges of the building project and old buildings. I'm gonna move us to manifest. I'd like one, big breath for the AP manifest to do it properly. We should do a second for the payroll manifest. Ed, you're pretty good at these. I saw you look up, saw the eyebrows go up. Can you knock this out, please?
You're
I'll
very
make
good
it
at these.
motion to approve the manifest 2020-10, $159,840.20. 2020-11, $63,427.51. 2020-12, $126,949.72.
Can I get a second for AP manifest as noted by Ed? I get a second, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Andy brings it home. Any discussion about the AP manifest? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the AP manifest as Ed had listed, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we got our momentum back. I'd like a motion on the payroll manifest, please. Go for it.
Payroll manifest 2020-11, $411,277.96. 2020-12, $400,006,766.67. And 20-13, $495,939.40.
Nice recognition. And Andy comes through. Any discussion? All in favor? As Ed read? Aye, unanimous. Even little hints of enthusiasm, because we are going on to public forum. All of you, patient and engaged folks have an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Welcome. So I just saw a motion. I'll go there, then there, then there, then there. You wanna start a timer? Just again, because we gotta go by our policy, just 3 minutes. You wanna just stand and introduce yourself? You don't even have to stand. Do you wanna just speak loudly enough? Yes.
So I'm Virginia Sharm, Sunapee resident. I just wanted to speak to the comment that you guys mentioned about college and graduation rates. And I just had an idea that a potential could exist with like maybe engaging maybe the class president or the student representative, because class presidents do like reunions, so they have interaction potentially, so they may be people that you can utilize to help find out that information.
Super. Thank you for being here and thanks for voicing that. I think down in front.
Hi, Jess Corkentine. I wanted to say thank you to all of you for your monumental efforts this year. Thank you. But also to Miles Cooney, if he's still here, not sure if he's still here, and the administration for organizing the ASVABs, which my son took this morning in coordination with Mascoma, and always supporting kids who maybe aren't on the 4-year track to college. So thank you to all of you that went out of your way to organize that and set that up. And also speaking to the wording of school choice, I have worked in several of the surrounding area schools, and I can tell you as a Sunapee parent, I would never choose to have my kids attend those schools, ever. I love the communities there, but they struggle with some of the things that we thankfully never have to deal with here. So that's just my 2 cents as a parent and a teacher and somebody who's had the experiences of working in surrounding community districts.
Thank you for attending and thanks for speaking up. Katie?
Sorry, that was my one that just went off. Katie Flint, again, I'm the president of the Teachers Union. I also just wanted to make sure that I got onto these minutes. I'm not sure if it's separate than the meeting minutes from the last meeting, but just to sort of state that I really am displeased with the language of that warrant article number 9. I think it's misleading, as Jess said. I don't think that it's a choice for students or for families. I don't think in any way it reflects the best interests of learning needs of students. It seems like there's another motive for maybe that article that has nothing to do with children, and to me, as a teacher, as a parent, that's offensive. That you would try to sort of cloak that in the needs of what children require. In addition, I also wanted to thank you very much for speaking so eloquently and calmly to all the different ramifications of what school choice would mean. You did it much more calmly than I did earlier. And lastly, just to the gentleman's point about the fields, you were saying if they were separated, you might be more likely to vote for 17 million versus a combined effort. And so my concern would be if they were to be combined, I think you would lose all the parents of the middle high school students who would want the fields. And so
Keep the comments to the board.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we appreciate it, so you can address it to us.
So if the votes are separated, I feel like all the parents who would want the fields would then vote down the school. So I think that the fields are just as important as the school.
Thank you for attending and speaking up, working our way across in the back.
I just was wondering, Amanda Kulak, the clarification on the school choice, because all of that kind of blows my mind, that if we were to pick an anchor school, and like had you mentioned that Kearsarge is 17, but the state average is 16, is this, like if that's our anchor school, is the district responsible for paying that 17, or is it, no, we only pay the state average, even if the anchor school is above, the parents are responsible? Because I think that's an important thing. Like, if Kearsarge keeps, say it was Kearsarge and they kept raising, okay, yes, Sunapee will always pay the state average, or will they, because it's our anchor school, pay more? So I just think that's like a huge number that could come into play. So maybe having that information and understanding exactly what it means with school choice, if we pick an anchor school, how that could affect our future.
Thank you. Was there, over this way? Anybody else? Chris?
I'm back here, sitting here on my calculator the whole time, trying to figure out the whole, I'm in the budget meeting, Chris Whitehouse. It's more of an informational thing. You guys are asking for, with the interest and everything, your budget and your increases and warrant articles, you're asking about $48 million. The town is asking for 8. That includes your existing budget. So you get $54 million ask this year. $54 million. For a community of 3,450 people. That's going to be your uphill battle. $54 million. No matter which thing. $54 million is a lot of money. For a small community like this, spend. Even if it's drawn out over 15, 20 years. $54 million. It's a big ask for money.
Thank you for attending and speaking up, utilizing public comment. Mike?
Can I just get clarification? So have you already voted on the $25.6 million bond as one vote only, so there's really no discussion to talk about separating it?
This is your chance to share your opinion.
But I'm asking, did you guys just
It's not a
vote?
Q&A. This is your chance to share your opinion.
Yes.
So that was the vote, that's what I want to, so let me
Yeah.
so I will make some points here, okay? I really have a hard time as I came on board with you guys with the school, the need was the elementary school. That's the biggest thing. And the want, as far as I'm concerned, as an athletic director, as a coach, everything else was a sporting thing. You could have separated it and let it go both ways. Sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You set off my Siri.
So all I'm gonna say is this is someone who supported the school, spending 17 point something million dollars, okay, and now we'll change that vote and say, no, I don't support 25 million. And the reason I don't support that is, and again, an athletic director and a sports thing, your kids still can play sports here. okay, for $4.3 million, and what the rec department's looking to spend and stuff, at $5-point-something million. I'm not gonna, I don't know if he's still here, but there was someone here I just spoke to out there. There's 20-something acres of land, he was gonna donate his land, and we could have looked at possibly the town buying that and having a complex right there. It's never gotten done. So by you guys going with a $25 million bond, one shot only, I think you just jeopardized the school. I think the school would have passed, the sports may not have passed, but now you basically went for the whole home run with it, and I think you just jeopardized that middle school kids. And as far as the school board, I don't understand this part, because you could put them both on, and you will look out for all these kids. But by doing it this way, knowing that there's a lot of concerns about this, I think you just killed your school, and I think you just hurt the kids. And this was someone who's been in schools for 20-something years as an AD, a coach, and a business owner. I think you guys just made a big mistake. That's my own personal opinion. And I'm disappointed, because you could have put them both in, and you could have let the townspeople vote on it. But by doing this, I think you just tied your own hands.
I appreciate your attending and sharing your opinion. Please.
I'm Jennifer Correa. I have 2 kids in the school system. I have an 8th grader and a 1st grader. And I will say the reason I'm voting yes is because we need this school. My son is in a classroom where radiators are having to hide behind bookcases. They have to, if there was ever a, God forbid, an emergency situation, our kids are in real danger in that school. So I hope that you will consider voting because of the kids. And I don't want to have to tell my daughter, you got the school, but you'll never play soccer, because you'll never get the time to play on one field split between 4, 5, 6 different teams. So it needs to be a full package. That community, our community is the school, the fields, the people in the stands, that's all of us. So I thank you for all your time and all the efforts you put into all this process. It's been great.
Thanks for being here and speaking up. It's nice to see so much more attendance and hear differing opinions so that we can be informed by them. We still have time, please.
My name is Jen Frederick, and anyone that knows me knows that I'm not really good with money. So anything that I would say would not have anything to do with money. I work at a school that sends kids out, a school choice school. It's a wonderful school, but I'm not here about that. One of the things that Sunapee has that I am super proud of is because it is a small community, and because our students have the ability to get to know their teachers and their grown-ups that they're surrounded with, our kids go out and they're able to communicate with grown-ups in a really good and positive way. Like, I'm gonna take Lizzie for example, because she's right here. She just spoke in a crowded room full of people. She's articulate, she makes sense, she's a good communicator. All 3 of my children can speak to adults and have conversations and make connections. So yeah, money's super important, but the connections and the abilities that all of our children have when leaving here, because it's such a small community, is pretty amazing. And so I had a conference with a little guy at school today, and he's going off to a really big high school, and I was like, dude, you gotta figure out how to talk to your grown-ups before you leave here. Because when you go to that big school, you're kind of going to be a number. And to change yourself from a number into a person, you're going to have to be able to articulate yourself and communicate with other grown-ups. And I think that intrinsically, because we live in a small place, that automatically happens. And I think that's more valuable in my mind than all of the money in the world. Don't tell Tom I said that though, because I'm supposed to be more fiscally responsible.
Thank you for attending and sharing your thoughts. Other voices? Sure.
I just want to speak separate of the student body rep and as a student and a community member. I'm Lizzie Nichols. I've already introduced myself, but I've noticed and picked up on that a lot of people in this room are very in tune with numbers, and I think that's a really good thing and a very responsible thing. And I would hope that maybe some time would be put into seeing how much per household that would add, the fields. Maybe someone already has. And then on top of that, take some time to reflect on what you see in the community go on, what you've taken out of this community, and if that small amount that the field would add to be worth a vote no on the whole project. And just kind of reflect on that as a community member, taking out of this town what is worth for you to put back in.
Thanks for adding this to your busy life and speaking up as a student. I'm seeing no other motion. Last call. All right. Agenda items for next meeting.
We'll have some health insurance numbers for you, we'll have the second reading policy, and we'll have the proposed 21-22 calendar.
I'll add things midstream. I want to bring this to a close. Motion to close the meeting at 8:34. Do I have a fast second? Second. Double. All in favor, close the meeting, 8:34. I say aye. Thank you.